Great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in for the next episode of the Enterprise AI Adoption Playbook. Really, really excited to have Richard Zane here today from UCHealth, where he's the Chief Innovation Officer. Richard, I would love to help the audience get to know you a little bit, understand what do you do at UCHealth, and sort of how did you get, what was your journey to the CIO role there?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to talk about our AI journey. My name is Rich Zane. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for UCHealth. Until a couple months ago, I was also the chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. And in August, I will be the Chief Medical Officer in addition to the Chief Innovation Officer for UCHealth. My journey started a long time ago. I was born in Switzerland. I lived in Italy, so I was an elementary school student, grew up outside of Philadelphia, went to college in Baltimore, had a stint as an elementary school teacher and a football coach. And then I went to medical school. And after medical school, I trained in emergency medicine, did a fellowship, went on to be faculty at Johns Hopkins and then Harvard. And then in 2012, moved out to the University of Colorado and was the inaugural chair of the department. The way that I became interested in innovation and technology was really pragmatic, which means that we had a problem statement, and that problem statement required us to think about how we embed technology into clinical workflows. That's really how it started. And technology can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And for us, at least in the beginning, it meant intelligence and how we bring assistance and decision-making, or how we facilitate decision-making of clinicians. The reason why it became very interesting was also very pragmatic. And there's a theme here, which is we start off everything with a problem statement, and then we think about how to best partner with industry to solve that problem. And the reality was I was an academic chair. I really needed the technology to do a better job of delivering emergency healthcare. And the best way to do that was to partner with companies, and in lieu of paying, we would help develop and co-develop. And we had a couple, I thought, very interesting successes. And it was coincident with our health system wanting to do something similar on a larger scale. And I was asked to be the Chief Innovation Officer for the health system, and was able to partner with our Chief Information Officer, with our Chief Quality Officer, our Chief Medical Officer, and build what I think is a pretty remarkable and robust system that embraces technology in a way that changes outcomes.
Yeah, really, really cool. I mean, it's an amazing story, especially to be able to drive that kind of change in the sort of very traditional healthcare industry that can obviously be difficult to get new technology into. I would love to understand a little bit more about, ultimately AI is such a new technology, right? The whole thing from the perspective of, the transformer architecture is still so new, less than a decade old. Most people's first exposure to the concept of AI was 2 years ago. So I'd love to understand from your perspective, why did you guys choose to move so fast here? What was the impetus for that? How did you guys get conviction to invest in doing work in this space, despite the fact that the technology is obviously still very new?
It's a great question. And I would push back a little bit and say that it's new.
Yeah.
So if we ask anybody who's not a computer scientist,
right,
and doesn't work for the NSA or maybe Google,
right,
or NVIDIA or Palantir, I think if you ask 10 people what they mean by AI, you're going to get 12 different explanations.
Right.
So AI, like anything else, is a tool. And the delivery of healthcare is people, process, and tools.
Yeah.
So how do we bring tools into processes so that people can deliver better healthcare?
Yeah.
When we say innovation, we mean intelligence, and two terms that mean everything and nothing. Right? So if we were to say that intelligence is helping humans make better decisions, and that could be anything from choosing pharmacotherapy at the bedside to thinking about how to better deploy capital, to how to do back office automation, to how to better organize operating rooms or infusion centers, really across the spectrum. That's what we mean. So when you say AI, most people probably are thinking of what they're seeing with ChatGPT, what
Yeah.
they're seeing with Perplexity and other companies. When I say AI, I really mean intelligence, and it could be rules-based logic. It could
Yeah.
be prescriptive and predictive analytics. It could be machine learning. It could be computational linguistics. It could be generative AI, and we have examples from across that spectrum. But I would argue that, at least in healthcare, AI that meets the Turing test definition of AI does not yet exist, and certainly has not been deployed. So it's just math. It's not magic. It's a tool. And tools are reliant on people and processes. So that's how we approach this.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, of course, the one caveat to all this is that any tool or any technology that is sufficiently advanced, right, is indistinguishable from magic. And I do think, like, even though you're certainly right that we don't have AI yet that has the sort of consistent capability of, like, an actual medical professional, certainly, we do have AI or technology that can feel like magic at times, right? In different contexts. And so I'm curious a little bit, like, what are the areas, you mentioned a wide spectrum of where AI fits into UC Health's like strategy and what you guys are trying to do. What are the areas where you've deployed things that have made a big difference to your ability to deliver, healthcare outcomes? And sort of how did you sort of pick those and invest in them?
So we pick based on pragmatic need.
Cool.
And, broadly, if you were to say what is innovation, I would have a distinction between something that's innovation, something that's innovative.
Yep.
And innovative to me means that we simply haven't done it yet, but it's been done somewhere else. So if I have a problem statement and I don't have a solution, I'm not going to go first to developing a novel solution. I'm going to say, who do we think is our peer group, and has anybody else begun to solve this problem? And then I'll shamelessly go learn, adapt, and implement.
Excellent.
If it's innovation, so new to the world, not just new to us, then if it's based on a problem statement, I know that we can't be the only place that hasn't solved this, because we've just asked and we haven't found people who've solved this. For us to do that, to solve that problem, we have to partner with someone, usually an external force. Two external forces. Could be two companies, could be an academic enterprise, and a company could be really anything from 3 women in a garage in Palo Alto to a Fortune 50 company and everything in between. When we do that, then we've started with a problem. And the reason why that's important, and I keep coming back to the pragmatic problem statement, is that in the world of startups, growth stage companies, AI, many places will come and approach healthcare with a solution to a problem they assume you have. But if I can involve a technology partner in understanding the problem, then the solution is likely to be scalable and implementable. So when we think about how do we deploy a technology, we think about what's the problem, where are we going to do it, who's going to do it, who are we going to do it with, what does success look like? And we don't do pilots because pilots are exhausting.
Yeah.
We do phased deployments. So we will test, prove, optimize, and then go larger, bigger, better, stronger, et cetera.
Cool.
So conceptually, we think about human adjudication and top of scope. So what requires human adjudication? And does every human, everything, whether it's an algorithm or a bot or a device working to the top of their scope, how do we integrate them? And how do we build the ability to make better decisions? And how do we scale? So right now, I'll give an example of fall prevention, which we do virtually. Yeah. And we have one human that can monitor 14 patients at the same time. If I embed AI and technology, whether it's computer vision, prescriptive analytics, thermal heat mapping, accelerometers, whatever that is, can I build the ability for one human to oversee 140 patients? And then in 3 years, 1,400 patients. And then soon after that, 14,000. So it's really that concept of force multiplication and using humans where human adjudication is required.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. So take the example of, fall prevention, which I think is a great example. What are the areas where you think, AI is already at work? If there are areas, where are the areas that you feel like, what are the types of AI? What are the areas in which you think AI can plug into helping you go from sort of 40 to 140 and ultimately to 140,000?
It's going to be the combination of understanding our data sources, being able to integrate technology, meaning whatever type of monitor or sensor, and then building the prescriptive analytics around that. So as an example, if we think about AI on a simplistic way, and I said that it's math and not just magic, but it's really advanced math, right? It's pattern recognition and then infinity fast pattern recognition with billions of confounding variables, where a really smart human can do 11 confounding variables at once. AI can do maybe almost infinity.
Wow.
So let's place a 82-year-old patient in bed who has mild dementia and a stroke. And they're at risk because if they get out of bed, they're going to fall, and maybe the fall consequences could be worse than a stroke. So if I have a human eyeball on that patient and the patient has a movement that may imply that they're trying to get out of bed, how can we use devices and algorithms to more accurately predict if a patient's movements will imply that they're going to get out of bed? So that's computer vision and digitizing movements and then developing patterns of movement that are consistent with that. What about the maybe dozens or hundreds or thousands of things in that patient's electronic health record or in other parts of that patient's sort of digital footprint that could help us predict people at risk for fall? So now we combine humans, all of the data about that patient available, maybe all at the same time, and movements that fit a pattern of fall. And all of a sudden, we can do more than 14 patients at the same time. And we can probably say that patient is a significant fall risk. And instead of saying, "Oop, that patient's about to get out of bed," we can say that patient is going to get out of bed in the next 3 to 4 minutes, which gives us a lot more lead time to work with.
Yeah, got it. That's I think that's a really, really great example. Obviously, healthcare is an industry that's very, very difficult to sort of do innovation in compared to some other industries because of the risks involved, right? You really care about not getting things wrong because someone with a stroke who, has a fall that could have been prevented is like a tragedy, right? And so I would love to understand a little bit from your perspective about, what are the sort of governance, compliance, and sort of security implications of trying to do this sort of work with such a new technology, or at least with, especially in the LLM world with sort of stochastic technology that's difficult to exactly predict like how it's going to behave. How do you as a healthcare institution approach mitigating and managing those risks and making sure that you're adopting the technology responsibly?
Yeah, so let me divide it into 3 categories. Let's have the technology that touches patients and changes, alters, or informs decision-making about a patient. That's all the way on one side of the spectrum. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it's task-oriented AI or technology that makes things easier and more convenient, but the consequences of a mistake are much lower. So an example would be if you use Google Maps or Apple Maps to get you from one place to another, and it ingests traffic patterns and weather patterns. If it's wrong, you aren't going to drive off a cliff because you're going to see that you're driving off a cliff and you're going to stop. So things like that are more easily adoptable and more easily diffused and promulgated. And then there are things that are in the middle. So for instance, in the middle would be AI agents helping a patient navigate picking up their prescription or getting in touch with their physician or preparing for a doctor visit or a surgery. So the first one's relatively easy. It's really technology and how cost effective is it. The second one is consumer centric. And I dislike calling patients customers, but this is more consumer centric because it's helping and assisting us care for patients without directly impacting decisions about their care. It's convenience and the routine and the mundane. So the routine and the mundane is where we've had the most deployment of AI because it's more easy to navigate. The part of AI that's very challenging from a patient delivery perspective is not just the implications of deploying the technology. It's not just about bringing it into workflows because that's important. It's not just about the change management, but the regulatory environment is extremely difficult and not yet set up for AI. I'll give an example. So we attempted to deploy an algorithm that predicts deterioration on inpatients. and it was FDA cleared and a fixed algorithm. But by definition, AI should be learning and getting better. It was not possible for it to learn and get better. We could inform the AI more accurately and deploy it more accurately. We were allowed to do that. The algorithm itself, we knew was getting better, but the one that we deployed was not the one that was FDA cleared. So we have to get through that from a regulatory hurdle perspective.
Super interesting. Yeah. That is definitely really interesting. I would love to learn a little bit more about, the cases where you sort of mentioned the routine and the mundane. It sounds boring, but I am I am very curious about what are some practical examples of the routine and mundane where you are able to get sort of value out of these tools.
So I'm going to give you an example, and I don't want to imply that routine and mundane mean not important.
Right, exactly.
Routine and mundane could be life-saving.
100%.
And the one example I'll give you is incidental finding follow-up. An example is if you get a chest x-ray, if your doctor ordered a chest x-ray because she's worried that you have pneumonia, there may be an incidental finding like a spot on your lung. It's not pneumonia. It's not why you got the chest x-ray that day, but we have to figure it out and do something about it. Right. So if you think about the hundreds of different ways in which those get followed up, it usually has many points of failure. It requires antiquated technology, including faxes and letters. It relies on information like, is your PCP, your primary care physician, accurately represented in the electronic health record? Do we have your home address? Do we have your phone, et cetera? So we did a partnership with a company called UCHealth, and in full disclosure, we are an investor in UCHealth. And using computational linguistics combined with case managers, we are able to take hundreds, if not thousands upon thousands of chest x-rays and categorize them into high risk, medium risk, low risk, and then develop closed loop communication for those patients and those doctors to arrange the follow-up. So if you have a spot on your lung that doesn't look like anything specific, the follow-up may be having a doctor visit, or it may be having another chest x-ray in 3 months or 6 months. But if it's more worrisome, it could be having a CT scan, or it could be having a CT scan in a year from now. Those things are very challenging to organize and follow. Now multiply that times thousands. So chest x-rays, thyroid ultrasounds and scans, pap smears, mammograms, calcium scores of your heart, all of those findings that don't require an immediate intervention, but do require follow-up, that's where AI is perfect. It's perfect for that because it's lots of confounding variables. It's closed loop communication, and AI is not making the decision. AI is following a governing algorithm or a governing flow, and then a human makes that final decision.
And so help me understand a little bit, like, what part of that process is the AI actually like doing for you guys, and what part is the human ultimately overseeing and adjudicating the AI's decisions?
So let's use the example of a chest x-ray. A chest x-ray is read by a radiologist. Right. The report goes into wherever that report goes, depending on what electronic health record system you're in. And they're described in very different ways. They're not necessarily discrete data fields. It's not as though there's a checkbox that says this is what they have and this is what they need. It's usually in the dictation, and that's not a discrete data element. So using this large language model and using computational linguistics, these reports are scanned, and the recognition of what may or is an incidental finding is identified. And then it's categorized based on high, medium, low risk, based on our dictum on what is high, medium, and low risk. Right. And then there are different follow-up streams for it. And when the AI gets to a block, meaning there hasn't been a confirmation of communication, it escalates it to a human.
Really cool. Really, really interesting. Nice. Changing track a little bit, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about what you said is, sometimes you guys are partnering with Fortune 50 companies. Sometimes you're partnering with like 3 women in a garage, right? The audience on this podcast is like, there's a lot of sort of innovation folks at large enterprises, but there's also a lot of startup founders who are like, trying to speak to those innovation folks. And I'd love to understand a little bit from your perspective, like, when does it make sense to partner with a Fortune 50 company, and when does it make sense to partner with a smaller startup? What are some of the startups that you guys work with, if you can talk about that, and what are you doing with them?
So we, as you can imagine, many startups will approach us.
Right.
So I'll give you our process on how we do or don't work with companies, whether it's a startup or a larger company. We love to say that we start off with a pragmatic problem that's strategic, but we are opportunistic as we are strategic. So we will get introduced to a company. If that company has a reference point that we know a person or another place that's used them, they get introduced to us by a trusted source, we'll have an evaluation of the company. But the first evaluation is me with some of my team members or my team members without me meeting with their executives, usually the founder or the CEO. And the first is just a litmus test. Does it seem like they've done something interesting before? Have they been successful? Are they directionally correct? And if they are, then we'll say, does this fit into our roadmap of where they may or may not solve a problem for us? And if they do, then we do 3 separate evaluations. One is we'll do a subject matter evaluation. So I'll take key opinion leaders or subject matter experts, and I'll say to them, I'd like you to meet this company. I want you to accept that what they say actually works and is true. I do not want you to like them because I like them. I want you to like them because what they say is true. If what they say is true, your job will be easier and better.
Right.
And our patients' lives would be better. Full stop. Then we'll do a technology deep dive, which can be very uncomfortable for the company because I've got some badass engineers that work for me. We'll, go under the covers. And the third is a financial evaluation. Are they a viable company? Is it an investable opportunity for us? We try and do those 3 things in parallel. It's a little bit in series. And if they get past all 3, then we'll think about what's something small we can do together, not to solve the problem, but just to prove that we culturally and from a cadence perspective can work together.
Yeah, really interesting.
Right? And that's essentially what we do, because the relationship you have with a company you invest in and need them to be successful is often many years, not just a year or 2. So the first thing is, can we work together? Are we culturally aligned? And do they work at our pace? Do we work at their pace? The pace of industry is very different than the pace of academia. We tried to match the pace of industry, but sometimes, if a startup is burning capital and doesn't have funding and we don't want to fund it, even if it's wonderful technology, it doesn't make any sense to work with them.
Yeah. What's an example, if you're able to share, of like a startup that you've worked with in the past 12 months? What problem were they solving? How did you partner with them? Like, what was the story there?
There's lots of them. I'll give you a success. One of the companies that we work with is a company called Arrive Health. Cool. And they used to be a company called RX Review. They started off in the clinical decision support space around pharmacotherapy. Cool. So I am a doctor taking care of a patient and I enter hypertension. The technology goes into the electronic health record, looks for specific confounding variables on whether hypertension is the thing I should be treating, and recommends the best medication based on known information, not just allergies, but has been pharmacogenomic testing, all kinds of things. They pivoted appropriately with our help to looking at real-time benefit check, electronic prior authorization, and then delivering insights to prescribing behaviors to optimize sort of cost and revenue. So we went from seeing patients where the physician would essentially write an electronic prescription, and approximately a quarter or a third of them were left at the pharmacy for a lot of different reasons, including it was just too expensive for that patient. But in the usual course of events, a provider can't know how expensive that is for the patient. So we can't have a conversation about it, because think of all the different PBMs and payers. I could write you a prescription, it would be free for you. I could write you a prescription, it would be thousands of dollars for you.
Right.
Now, when I write a prescription, I get an automatic tab that shows me exactly how much it's going to cost for that patient, whether that is covered by their PBM or payer, and then gives me an alternative if it's not. So if I were treating you for high blood pressure, I could give you a prescription that's 1 pill a day, but it costs you $100 a month. Or I could give you a medication that's twice a day, but it costs you $0. That allows me to have a conversation with you to say, look, they're both equivalent. One costs more. Which one would you like? Or if you need an authorization that usually can take weeks, it can take hours or days because we can do it electronically. It required the company to build connections with all of the PBMs and get integrated into our electronic health record. And initially, we actually paid to have it integrated into the electronic health record. And now it's in the native Epic, and it's both in Epic and Cerner. And it went from one institution to thousands and thousands of institutions, and has hundreds of thousands of users every day.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I love that. It's a great articulation of the value proposition of partnering with, an institution like you guys from the perspective of the startup. So really, really cool. Awesome. Somehow we're already running short of time. So I have a couple of more fun questions for the wrap up. So my first question that I like to ask people, and feel free to say this is completely nonsense if you want to, but how long do you think it will be before AI replaces your job?
My job? Never.
Never. Okay.
AI will never replace my job. But as a doctor, like let me just speak from the lens of a physician. AI is not going to replace doctors.
Okay.
But doctors that use AI are 100% going to replace doctors that don't, and they should.
Tell me a little bit about that process. Like, what makes, what the doctors need to do in order to be equipped to use AI to become the most extraordinary doctors that they can be. And why is it that AI will never be able to replace them? Because, Sam Altman is out there telling people that, hey, all the jobs are going to be gone in somewhere between 5 years and 10 years or something, right? What does he not get?
I don't know if AI is going to be in the emergency department, relocating people's shoulders when they're dislocated, doing CPR and intubating people when they have heart attacks and strokes, looking at a rash and saying, this is what it is, or examining an abdomen and saying you need this test or that test. AI is a wonderful tool with amazing potential, which will, without a doubt, fundamentally change the delivery of healthcare without exception.
Really cool.
But it's really an augmenter to humans, at least in the medical field. We may not need, as many coders as we need now. Right. We may not need as many people calling to get prior authorization from insurance.
Right.
But we're never not going to need doctors, nurses, healthcare providers. That's a never event. Mm-hmm. And then there's I'll give you a difficult example. Say that you have hypertension. Right. And the best medicine for you is a beta blocker. I have to have a conversation with you about whether the potential consequence of impotence is important to you.
Right.
Not quite sure that AI can do that now. Maybe eventually, I don't know how comfortable you're going to be with it. There are lots of conversations like that. Yeah. The humanistic part of healthcare delivery can't be replaced. The decision-making, the decision recommendation, the aggregation of data, the aggregation of information, the facilitating, the navigation, absolutely. The accuracy, absolutely. Right now, AI is great at interpreting an image that's normal. It's going to be great at interpreting an image that's abnormal. It's going to be great at recommending what the next steps are. But the next steps are usually not one thing. They're usually one, two, or three things that have different consequences for different people under different circumstances.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense to me. And the examples you gave, I think, are really interesting. If I were to just put to you what I think some of the sort of, I know a lot of people who are really into that AI is going to take over everything, right? So if I can just put to you what I think some of them might say, what I think some of them might say would be okay, well, yes, it's super challenging to have a very sensitive conversation. The medication is going to have these side effects, talking about that is difficult. In some ways, some people might find it easier actually to talk to a computer about that isn't going to judge them for their answer, and isn't going to sort of have opinions about what the right answer is. And there are probably some people who might actually find that easier. I can certainly imagine to take an example for me, right? If I can sometimes find it hard to talk about my emotions. I can imagine a world where it was easier for me to talk to a computer about that because there isn't a person on the other side, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. In fact, there's a huge body of evidence absent AI. Patients are much more honest with a bot than they are with humans. Did you smoke today? Did you eat whipped cream?
Right.
That sort of thing. And there's clearly going to be a shift. There's going to be a frame shift, just like when the computer was invented, or the printing press, or the steam engine. But that creates more jobs that are required.
Right.
So there's going to be a frame shift. Just like, I have physician assistants who do a lot of the things that I used to do 25 years ago. I don't want to compare humans to AI, but frames shift, acuities change.
Right.
Ophthalmologists to do a lens for a cataract used to be a giant thing 30 years ago. 50 years ago, it was brand new. Now it's absolutely routine. And it's the routine that AI is going to do a great job at. It's going to pick the lens. It's going to tell you where to go, but it's going to be a human that puts that lens in.
Really cool. Super, super interesting. Okay, awesome. And then my last question for you is, obviously we're living through a world of like pretty dramatic like technological change, which is, exciting and sort of humbling at the same time. I'd love to know for you, like what ways are you personally like most excited about, AI entering your life and like making it better? What are the things that give you the most optimism for the future about this like new technology?
So I'm by definition an optimist.
Cool. Awesome.
And I think AI will fundamentally change the way humans work.
Really cool.
Will improve lives. It'll 100% improve the delivery of healthcare. It'll make it hopefully cheaper, hopefully more accurate, hopefully more humanistic, hopefully more accessible. So I can't imagine winding the clock back 30 years. I don't want to go back 30 years. I want to see what's happening in 30 years from now and bring it to today. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be great for providers. It's going to be great for patients, and it's going to be great for society. There's not a doomsday in this. It's all good.
Really, really cool. Well, that's a great note to end on. Richard, thank you so much for coming on. It was really, really good having you. And if there's anything that you want to encourage folks to check out, like a website or social or, papers, whatever it is, like now's a great chance to make the plug.
Check us out on the web, UCHealth Care Innovation Center.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. And looking forward to having you again on the Podsum.
Take care. Thank you.